How you doing, guys? This is Chase Landry for the first episode of No Change Orders. We're out here on a job site in Opelousas, Louisiana, one of our project sites for Chase Group Construction. I'm the owner of the construction company, and we wanted to show some of the elements of a job site and a development because we have so many of them here that are present. We wanted to walk around the site and be able to show a few of the elements that we're talking about on the show. We just want to show some of the land we have out here. That's a potential parcel of land that an owner could buy as part of their feasibility study. Whenever they're looking for land, they're gonna see a piece of land that might be an acre like this or a couple acres. And the point is you ask yourself, can I fit my building on here? If I want 5,000 square foot, 10,000 square foot, can I fit my building on here? My parking lot, my detention pond, whatever it is, whatever your requirements are, or what the city requires you to have, you're gonna have to get that figured out before you buy the land, which is your feasibility studies or your due diligence, as they call it in real estate. And you're gonna wanna find out all those things before you purchase the land. And whenever you're looking at it, diagnosing the property, you wanna look at it from the construction standpoint, from the development standpoint. You know, in some of the feasibilities on perhaps a traffic study, you're gonna see how many entrances you can get, or if you need a full access entrance, you may need to only come in a right turn in, right turn out, or you might need it to be full access to go any direction, in and out. But you're gonna find out some of those feasibility answers during the feasibility study to be able to see if the land is the right fit for you. Just because your building of 5,000 or 10,000 square feet could work, that's not the only litmus test that you need to go through. So some of the things that are present on this site that are good examples to show is, of course, you have raw land. Of course, you'd have to come out here and you'd have to build an entrance to your site, maybe an exit. Maybe you just need one, maybe you need an in and out. It just depends on the building requirements. If you swing around over here, you can see this was a master plan drainage pond for the entire development over here, which means that all of the drainage comes to this pond and then it goes elsewhere after it fills up to a certain point. But not all developments are equal like this. Sometimes you're gonna have a lot that doesn't have any detention or retention pond to hold the water, so you're gonna have to put that on your lot. And so that's why in previous videos we talked about a civil engineer diagnose your site and lay it out for you so that you understand what exactly you can fit on the land that you're purchasing, but also what does the city and the state and the parish require of you to do on that site. So you may have to put a detention pond and also meet the code of your parking lot spaces. Maybe it's every 250 square feet you have to have a parking spot. So that's gonna take up some area on your site. The detention pond also may take up some square footage, and then your building can only be a certain amount of square foot because after all your requirements, you're only left with a certain amount of area. And keep in mind, you also have to have green space. So as a design builder, as a developer, that's what we go through all the time. We're used to like diagnosing properties like this, but we always strongly suggest that it starts with a civil engineer because they're gonna be able to help you diagnose what can fit on the property, what are additional things they may require because they've been through the process a lot. We also know a lot of that stuff too because a lot of times in Lafayette Parish or in Louisiana in general, a lot of the jurisdictions we're used to dealing with, so we understand what they want off the bat. Some of them may have a 20% or 25% green space requirement, which means it has to be pervious area or water and rain can drain through. You're gonna have certain landscape strips. So it all plays a part, what they require you to have to be able to build your building. So it's not just as easy as saying, hey, although an acre is 43,560 square feet, a 5,000 square foot building may or may not fit on it because of the requirements of the particular zoning and requirements from the city. It just depends. So it has to be diagnosed for your specific needs. And a lot of times we can understand that in a short conversation and a general understanding after you go through some schematic drawings and some ideas, some sketches, we can identify if that land is suitable or not. All right, guys, we took some of the elements we talked about in the field and we put it on a whiteboard so it's a little easier to understand and see visually. Right here, we just took an acre of land, just say it's 43,560 square feet, roughly 208 by 208. But we just want to illustrate some of the characteristics of it. Here's a parking lot, here's a building, approximately 5,000 square feet. We have a detention pond here, and we have a full access, an entry and exit to the site. And right here, what I drew in was some landscaping strips A lot of times they're going to require to have landscaping beds and or shrubs and trees all around the property, really. They're also going to have, I put here a question mark with a dimension line. They're going to have some type of setback. Like for example, in Lafayette Parish, there's a commercial mixed zoning. I want to say usually it's 15 feet of a setback from the front road to the building, which this doesn't show that. There's a parking lot here and then the building, but for that particular one, they want the buildings to be very close to the road, sort of like old downtown areas that had the buildings very close to the road and you couldn't see any of the parking, see it behind it or in a parking garage. But anyhow, a setback is always going to be something to consider. Even on the sides and the rear, there's going to be an amount of feet that the building has to stay within. And sometimes if you go within those zones, you have to fire rate the end of the building or the side of the building that encroaches that space that's inside of there because you're going against the allowable space. So they don't want buildings too close together for fire reasons and just want to reduce the catastrophe in that case. But anyway, just going back to like the reasons whenever you're doing a feasibility on a particular piece of land is that you have a building, you can have a parking lot, a detention pond. A lot of people don't think about. Another element that you may forget about whenever you're preliminary laying everything out is you're going to need a dumpster pad. You're going to need somewhere to throw your trash away. Although some businesses can get away with a small trash receptacle, trash can on wheels, and that suffices, but most of the time in commercial, you're gonna have a lot of trash and you need to have a trash receptacle or a dumpster pad. And so in this case, in this building, you may put a dumpster pad over here in the back, but you gotta have access to it. The large trash trucks come to it and they have to unload, back out, and then get out of your parking lot. So you have to have room for them to maneuver. And so anyway, it's just another element on a site that you have to consider whenever you're putting everything together and laying it out on your site to see if 1 acre of land would work. And again, by the way, this is not to scale. So this 5,000 square foot building is probably smaller on an actual acre, but it's just to give you the visual of how it looks once you start putting everything on paper. The other element to this is the full access, like I said. You could have an entirely separate entry over here, and let's just say if you wanted to have an entry and an exit only for a drive-through for a restaurant, a coffee shop or something like that. Not all jurisdictions or DOTD, the state highway, or just the city, they may not allow to have two separate entries and exit off of the particular road just because of safety of traffic, or it's too busy on that road and they just want to limit the amount of locations people are coming in and out of a property. So when you're looking at that, if you need two separate ones necessarily, you're going to have to get it understood from the city standpoint or Department of Transportation with the state. To further explain a detention pond, that's one item on a commercial site that a lot of people hear about. They see it a lot in South Louisiana and I guess the southern region of the United States. The main point of it is to hold the water, the storm water, when it rains. It's to hold it on your site for a longer period of time than it would have before. Whether you have concrete or asphalt in a driveway from your building, stopping the water from draining, you now have all that water. It wants to just go into the drainage system of the city much faster than it did before because it was being drained through the soils and being soaked up in the soil that was there before when it was only grass. So an illustration just to show what a detention pond, something like this does is the civil engineer would design this parking lot to have some catch basins. They connect underground like this. You may have another one over here. And all the water on this site, on the concrete, it all drains in your on-site water collection system. And then it goes to your pond. And then from your pond, then it'll fill up and go into a smaller pipe when it's at a higher elevation, and it'll go to the stormwater system underground of the city. And then it'll get into the city once it collectively had enough time to consume all the stormwater from every other property in the city. This is an illustration of this would be, if this is the pond of the stormwater that's being collected on your whole site, there's gonna be a pipe usually that's somewhere up here, and usually it's within a box of some sort, so it's usually like that. When the water starts to get higher in the pond, it'll go in this pipe, which is usually a smaller orifice, and then it'll go in here, and that's going to the city. But as you can see, it has a lot of filling up with water first before it goes in this pond, and then it slowly goes out of a smaller orifice pipe into the city, so that way that the city has a lot more time to deal with stormwater before it hits the bayous, the rivers, the lake, before that fills up very fast. All the commercial properties and residential developments, the idea is that if they do something like this, it saves a lot of time for the city's wastewater system to build up and disperse the water and let it disperse in the natural ground as much as it can before it starts flooding the streets and backing up into the system. That was a tiny introduction to stormwater drainage and detention pond collection, but it's just one more element on a commercial site that makes a difference, and it's a big one down here in South Louisiana, because there's always a flood. On heavy rains, we always see it in our roadways. But many other states have the same issues, but I know a lot of people here know about it. But anyhow, these are characteristics on a site layout that a civil engineer would lay out for you in their preliminary design to show you the possibilities of how you can lay your building out, how you can lay your parking lot, your landscaping strips, trees, shrubs, and also the detention pond. We talked about the dumpster pad. Another thing I didn't mention was the possibility of a loading dock, a delivery area for trucks to park and deliver materials or supplies or food or whatever it is, whatever type of business it is. But in the end, it's an illustration of a feasibility study on a particular piece of land when you're trying to build your business, and you need to lay it out. You need to consider all the things that's possible. There's all sorts of things to think about, but these are the immediate ones that you first go through to make sure that it's a good enough property for your use and your intentions for your business.